I think people way discount how much the emotional part of loving our equipment and our camera inspire us and push us to go shoot.
This podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. All right, guys, we are back for another episode of the Brooklyn PhotoWorks ISO 320 podcast. And today we are joined by special guest, LA-based photographer, Josh Rose. Josh,
Hey,
welcome to the house.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. Been listening to what you guys are doing, and it's really rad. And thanks for having me on.
Oh man, thank you. I mean, I think the best thing about this kind of coronavirus downtime, if there is a silver lining, is the fact that it's been a time where we've been able to connect with all these amazing photographers, and now we get to talk to you.
That's great. Well, let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
What can I tell you?
Tell us everything, and start when you were 5.
No one wants I know we all love our photography backstories, but I get super self-conscious every time it comes up.
Well, maybe before we get there, look, a lot of what I think prompted this podcast and what kind of keeps Mark and Daniel and I kind of chatting is our kind of our similarities as far as what we like aesthetically, equipment wise, just visually. And right off the bat, when Mark, brought your Instagram to my attention, I was like, wow, this dude shoots film and he shoots Leica, and I guess you're a Leica Academy instructor. So lots of common ground, and just like looking at, what's behind you and all those beautiful black and white. So let's maybe start there. I mean, I see maybe a Hasselblad sitting on the table over there, and let's no
Hasselblad. No,
oh shit.
Not nearly at that level. I wish
you strike me as someone that chooses their gear from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
Rather than, and we do that as well, and specifically I do that.
Yeah.
So,
well,
how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, the gear thing. First of all, I was doing a talk with Omar Z. Robles the other day, who I think maybe sold to one of you guys a lens, or vice versa, out in New York. Was that you, Adam?
Yeah, I bought a collapsible Summicron that I had a very short affair with, and but it was cool because I got to meet him.
Short.
Yeah, but I think that's the world, and without going too far back, I started with a Nicormat, like one of the first SLRs, but it was really, those were still very similar to rangefinders in that it's still manual focus and, that kind of thing. So, and the compact design. So this sort of love affair started holding a camera. And then I cut to decades later. And, I was doing professional photography with an SLR, and I've always been a Nikon guy because I started on Nicormat, at least early on. And so, what happens. It's like, you buy lenses for one system, and then you can't leave that system because, it's just cost prohibitive and you already have all this glass. And so I was just sort of upgrading, and then got onto the D300 and 700 and 750 and the 800 and then the 850, just for the professional stuff, for the studio work and if you got to fly and run a set, and you're either using medium format or you're using some super high powered Canon or Nikon. So that was all happening. And then a buddy of mine named JD, who is just an incredible guy and a classicist, and he has a lot of fine things. He's one of those guys who's either got a ton of money or no money. And he's just sort of that serial entrepreneur. And when he has a lot of money, he's buying lots of things. He wouldn't buy one Leica, he would buy two. He wouldn't buy one Panerai, he would buy 3. So he had a 2. And when he slides, he sells everything off to his friends, and that's that's sort of his process. And so he had a 240, an M240 and a 35 Cron that he had gotten here in LA. And and he was offloading it. And, I was already into cameras, and I already, had still shot some film. And so I was like, that might be a really good thing to do, just to get that and reacquaint myself with sort of the more passion side of photography. And so I bought his 240 and his 35 Cron, and it just sort of reignited something in me. I mean, just the item itself. And I then upgraded to the M6 so that I could also, interchange lenses with that. And this was a 1989 model that had never been opened.
Wow.
A friend of my, it was incredible. A friend of my dad's worked at a camera store here in Los Angeles. And on a whim, well, he would do this at periods of time throughout his career at this place. And he would just keep them in the box, put them in his safe, and he would just, hold on to them.
Wow.
So I grabbed it, and it's interesting when you wait that long and you open it, there's a thing that happened. So it also had the 50 on it, the 50 Summicron that came with these back in the day.
Wow.
And
Did it have the bubbles on the?
it had the grease. There was there's like a weird like coagulation thing. You have to get it cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
But that was disturbing at first. I'm like, what? And but there's a guy here who cleans these things up. Steve's is a great shop for that kind of stuff. So then there was a series, and I can get into that if you want, of going from the 240 to the 240p to the M10p, all of which were very conscientious moves up for very specific reasons that I think are endemic to the M. And then of course, like I had that Noctilux moment where I did that without thinking.
I think we should just get into why. I think we should let's just cut the shit. Let's just get to why, because we're all in the same boat,
Yeah.
M9 for 6 years. I had like a panic moment. I sold off my 75 Cron, 35 Cron, and M9, and then I made my way back harder than ever. But the M's all have their own qualities, and they all have their own quirks.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to what led you, because I'm in love with my M10.
Yeah.
And I use it mostly for my professional work.
Mm-hmm.
I've rebought an M9P. And
I was going to say, weren't you a M9 guy to start though?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And the limitations on that became basically so overwhelming for me, because I shoot a lot of weddings.
Right.
And so a lot of the day, my legs were chopped off if I can't go above a certain ISO I needed to, which at that point, I think it was 1,000. I was comfortable shooting, and some people would say even less.
Yeah. I started at 1,000. Yeah.
You started 1,000 on the M9?
I did. I never had the M9, but when I walked out of the house, I'm on ISO 1,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it dark in LA all of a sudden?
No.
It's dark in your mind.
Let's get into settings after we get into bodies.
Yeah.
You're going for a look, I can imagine. That's
what, and then I had a love affair with the 246, because I love black and white. I mean, if I'd just be happy shooting black and white all day.
Yeah.
And then that led me to the M9 monochrome. Got rid of the 246, and I was lucky enough to get an M10M.
This all happened within the space of 1 week.
1 week. 1 week.
Eyes rolled up in your head. Like, I don't know. Give me this thing.
So, but it's like
you're
finding what works for you, and you get rid of what doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
And you find what works for you. And for some reason, some people, I don't like the M10.5. Everyone has their own thoughts. So I'm curious to what. Some people won't touch the 240.
This is a world that I think the four of us and maybe 10 other people, can like really embrace and talk about openly with each other. It's I think people way discount how much the emotional part of loving our equipment and our camera inspire us and push us to go shoot.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
And it's a real thing, and by the way, other industries do this all the time. No one makes fun of someone for having a 911 or upgrading their tractor, like these are the tools of the trade. And when you have really nice ones, it makes it nice to go out and shoot, like when I opened this one up, this is the M6, like I kept it by my bed, like I like to look at it in the morning.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah. No,
No.
I stopped short of bringing it in the bed, but yeah, it's.
My wife is like, "What are you? Put it in the other room." I was like
no.
Yeah, but it's funny that you mentioned the
Noctilux.
Noctilux because I had it too because I thought, I get serious about M photography and street photography, and I bought a Noctilux and I got a bit tired of it actually after 2 years and actually sold it off.
Yeah.
So,
I've been thinking about the same. I've had mine for a number of years, and I've thought, because I know you guys are big fans of the 50 Summilux, and I really liked your discussion about that.
Wait a second. Are you asking for us to go on and on about the 50 Summilux? I mean,
tell me more.
I've got some thoughts on it, but now that you ask.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, actually, I've
crazy.
never owned it. And that would be a question back to you guys, which is
Why have
what
you
are you waiting
so
for?
Well, no, what would you recommend? I guess that's the answer. Would you recommend, like, do I lose a bunch going from the Noctilux to the Summilux?
I don't think so because I've owned the Noctilux, the 095 and the F1.
Mm-hmm.
And the F1 is something that I miss because it's got its own kind of look. But I don't know, the Summilux 50 it's perfect. Also from the portability. And you probably go the same way because like when I started shooting, I thought, okay, you'd have to shoot everything wide open to get that Leica look, And as I progressed more, you kind of start stopping stuff down and look more for composition and elements and all that stuff.
Same.
So I don't really use that wide open look that much anymore. So
I think the thing that's so nice about the Summilux is it's incredibly sharp without being clinical. So it's got this beautiful organic way of rendering detail. And it looks good on virtually any body that you put it on. So if I have it on the M10 or if I have it on the M9 or the M9M or even on a film camera, it renders beautifully in every context. So it almost is like probably one of the most versatile lenses. And the thing about it is that when you do shoot wide open, it really kind of approximates a medium format look. It has this three-dimensional quality about the way that it isolates the subject from the background, and the background is so pleasing. But then again, once you stop it down, it also is incredibly versatile. So I've honestly, for me, the whole reason why I got into heavily into digital M photography was because of the Summilux and that 50 Summilux. And that's kind of been a lot of how a lot of my gear choices have evolved over the years, is that there's a certain look from maybe one particular lens that has driven me to run toward that system. And with the M thing, it's like, well, then I put on that, and then I put on 35 Lux, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, they're all amazing, So
it's interesting. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
For me, the 35 Cron was that lens. I started with a more of a reportage kind of in New York school look that I was drawn to, growing up with, the Life magazine stuff. And this, I don't know if you guys can see this image. This is a Carl Maiden's print. I should just show this to you guys. Hold on.
It's a big space.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
You can see it, but
wow.
Anyway, that's a number 2 of 50, I think, that we had in my house growing up. And so that might have been a 50 actually. It looks a little bit like a long lens look, but I was really drawn to the reportage style. And it wasn't until much later in my life that I even kind of got to using shallow depth of field as a look, that was not really, it wasn't a look I really ever loved, but but it's very effective, you know, and as Omar reminded me in our talk, as I was like, yeah, you know, shallow depth of field's a crutch. And he was like, yeah, that's because you don't live in New York. Like,
it's
like,
true.
there's so much shit in the background that you need that, you know, to separate.
It's interesting
stuff.
because it's true because like I'll go out and I learned early on, like even when I started shooting, like I remember like, you know, I would go out with just like, I had a 51.4 on my Nikon and I would just literally, or I would bring I had also a 35 f2 and I would just bring one lens with me and just see the world through that. But I think that it's probably true. And I never thought about it, is that I think I started shooting shallow to basically drown out all of the chaos that was always surrounding me and isolating my subject amidst it. So New York became like this incredible backdrop, this beautiful palette. And all of those elements, whether they're people or cars or buildings, whatever, could just kind of be informative, but not take over from the subject. So that's a really, so hearing you articulate it like that, you know, really kind of like gets the wheels turning. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, subconsciously, I didn't even think about it.
He went so far as to actually say that he thought my look was a very Los Angeles look for that reason.
Whoa.
And I think that's through the eyes of a New Yorker, but I think it'd be through the eyes of any, you know, like big city dweller or compressed, you know, city dwellers. And I shoot almost when I'm with my Leica, I shoot with my 21 almost exclusively.
I just wanted to touch down on that because I'm about to purchase a 21. And is that the widest lens that you're using on your M system?
No, and I wouldn't do that, by the way.
Okay.
Is it the widest? Yes, it's not the widest open. But yeah, 20, I don't do anything wider. If I go wider than that, I'll probably switch to another camera.
Okay.
But yes, 21 Super Elmer is my wide.
Because I'm thinking about either getting the Elma or there's a new Nocton out, 21-1.4.
Yeah. I don't know what the need for a 1.4 on a 21 is. It's not going to look shallow because it's too wide. So, so I don't know what you get for that except for low light, which is another thing. I don't know why unless you're doing like interior establishing shots, or like architecture, maybe that would be good.
I used to have the 24 Elma and that was amazing. And I kind of regret selling that. So
yeah. I kind of want to get the Q2 just to have like a fixed 28.
I should have sold mine to you.
I know. I heard you talking about it.
Yeah. It's funny. We've, you know, all three of us have had Qs and Q2s.
We had the Q.
Bought and sold them, but I don't miss that. I'd rather have another lens than a Q. It's just 28's really not my jam, and I don't need to have all that money, you know, on a body attached to a great lens. I'd rather just have the great lens and put it on whatever body of my choice.
But if you're looking for an autofocus and you know you want that 28, it is.
Oh, it's incredible for what it is.
Especially the Q2, the rendering is gorgeous.
But
I was thinking specifically for travel, honestly.
I mean, you can
for travel, it's like I've taken it on numerous trips, and to be honest with you, I'm shooting with it and I'm like, oh man, if I just had a little bit more, you know, it was a little tighter, and I don't know. I just want,
and same with me. I would love to have a 35 on that.
Yeah. The 35 to me is like the perfect focal length for most things.
Right.
You know, if you're not shooting like, you know, specifically shooting portraits.
Right.
And I'm really sad right now because I just replaced my 35. And then I got and I bought it used because I buy most of my stuff used. And then the lens seemed a little funny. So it's in the shop right now. And I feel like
funny. It wasn't in focus.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm just like,
it seemed a little funny.
My last 35 was like, so like, it was almost clinically sharp. So now I'm just like, I don't have a 35. I don't have anything wide. Wow. So a 21 would be cool. I mean, I think for some automotive stuff, the 21 would be cool. I mean, look, the wider you go, the more of the story that you can tell at one time without, you know.
And I don't know if you had the chance to look at Josh's work, because what I really like about your stuff is the wide angle. That's really always really inspiring and really cool.
Thank you. It's there's a high learning curve on a 21, as you guys know, or 14, which I've also shot. 21 doesn't have as much warping on the edges, which I like. And the 21 Elmer is so good at that. with the vignetting,
Mm.
that it actually makes it a viable street lens. Because you could try this on other cameras with other 21s, and it has that 35 chron look, but it's wider, and it's really hard to do on a wide angle lens.
I saw you know Guy Berryman, the dude from Coldplay.
Oh yeah.
He's like a big so he recently got, I think, a 21, and it's like a 21, and he's got it like set. He's got the focus set and the aperture. He's got it set basically as a point and shoot. So he's because it's so wide that I think at f5.6, like literally everything within a certain range is going to be in focus, and he just kind of fixed it that way onto the camera. And then he set the ISO at whatever. He just set it so that he can use it as a point and shoot. And I thought, man, that's so liberating, just to be able to.
Is he on a M?
Yeah.
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 That's what I do with my 21. I have the 1.8 Voigtlander, because I'm basically using it for receptions. And I throw my flash on, and I just zone focus 5.6 like you were saying, and it's beautiful. I'm super impressed with it every time. It's my only Voigtlander lens I have, but I would recommend it.
I think I got to look on eBay.
But I've also never shot with the Elmar, so
you'd like
the
it.
Elmar's what's the aperture on that?
3.4.
3.4,
yeah.
And for wide angle, that's fine. I mean, look, I do like the look of like a fast wide, like a 21 Summilux or a 20. Like I think it's 24 Summilux is a lens that I would probably want to add at some point, because there's
huge, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I've also gotten to that point with mirrorless that I like the idea of a small camera body and a relatively compact lens. And you put a big honking lens on an M body, and it's like, now you've kind of defeated the whole purpose, unless you're really committed to that look. But
I think that's what people don't like about the Nocti too, is
it's so big.
It doesn't totally feel like it fits on that body.
I shot with the 75 Noctilux at a Leica event in the city, and I was just like, Jesus. I mean, you have to be like a professional weightlifter to like carry this lens around. I mean, it was beautiful, but my God, what a honking lens that thing is.
Yeah.
When you're shooting your M6, what film do you use? And also, are you sending it out to be processed and scanned? Are you doing any of it on your own? Because we do a lot of talking about blending film and digital. And I think with M's it's that much easier.
So I'm a Portra 400 guy through and through for color, and in fact I still like to shoot color even and then do my own black and white processing on it. And just to get off on a sidetrack a little bit with that, it's the reason I don't buy the monochrome is you're making your adjustments on luminance only. And I have just gotten used to making my adjustments on color, and it's how I see the world, not as values of grays. I see them as colors because that's how my eyes see it. And so when I look at something and I think, oh, would that look good in black and white? Part of what I'm looking at is blues and reds and yellows, and thinking, what could I do with that, in post, in a processing. So it would totally throw me to do that as luminance only, which is, and I like ectochrome, and I like to shoot with high contrast black and white film if I'm gonna shoot specifically for black and white. But I find I just because I love a high contrast look, obviously. So, but if I'm giving myself the most leniency in post, then I will shoot Portra, because I already like the way it looks in color, so I don't have to do anything with that, and then I can do whatever I want.
And then you post process the Portra to your black and whites.
Yeah, and I do that digitally.
That's so interesting.
That's a really interesting point to reach on, because I gave myself a try with the monochrome, and I had that for about a month. And I sold it because, like you mentioned, I think I'm more of a color shooter. I do more color work,
Mhm.
but I like to have that option to either do color or convert in black and white.
Yeah.
I also shoot Fuji, so with Fuji you have these brilliant black and white simulations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I shoot A-cross, or I used to
yeah,
shoot A-cross a lot. And I actually spent a bunch of time creating the same Lightroom conversion that as close as I could approximate to what the Fujifilm does in camera.
Yeah.
Because I
Acros
think,
is amazing.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say on the subject of, no, I lost my, no, go ahead. Because I lost my train of thought.
The thing about the monochrome that, because I used to think like, what a bunch of horse shit, a camera that only shoots black and white. You got to be a real tool bag to like be carrying something, throw all that money into a one trick pony. It wasn't until I shot with one and I was like, holy shit, like the way that thing sees light and all the nuances light and all the gradations and the tonality is so unique and so special. And I would take like monochrome images and then I would take like black and white images shot almost identically, same lens and whatever, and same settings, and try to approximate the edit. And it is almost impossible. I mean, because there's data, there's information. I don't even want to use data because it feels much more emotional to me. There's a look that you're getting. There's nuggets. There's stuff in the monochrome files that just doesn't exist in a color file. And that's with the M9M. And then Daniel, who has the M10M, who has shared a bunch of his files with me, there's a look to the blacks, and there's a look that camera has that I have not
Which is
seen.
completely different than the M9M.
Right.
And I was actually debating, I had them both for a little bit because I was I'm not saying so unsure, but it's a completely polar opposite look.
Yeah.
For
for me, it's all true what you're saying, but it's a look that I don't like.
It's interesting, Josh, because looking at your work, I've just got your Instagram open. There's so much black and white.
Yeah.
The M10M
would lean itself. Have you
would literally,
yeah,
you would, I mean, just from looking at your work, like that would lend itself to the type of processing that you're doing, in my view, pretty seamlessly, because the way that you kind of see your blacks and really make them like very, very thick and very charcoaly and contrasty. Look, I'm not selling you on the camera, and there's no reason that you should even
probably
consider
help create it or something. I don't know,
but it is interesting.
I should give it another chance. There's a few photographers who I know who shoot it, who I follow, and I think they do great work. But the thing I don't like about their work is the processing, and
right.
And I have, for some reason, attributed that to the monochrome. To me, it looks like structure. It looks like added structure. Like it has the same effect on me as it would if you took a shot and moved the structure slider all the way up.
And this is for which camera specifically?
Yeah, which monochrome camera? Because there's three.
The 10M.
The 10M.
Oh, the 10M. Interesting. Okay.
So for me, that's been the hardest part. Is my heart is sort of with the M9M tones, but I've had to sort of work in post with my N10 images to sort of almost dial it back a bit to control the output and how I want the images to be.
Because what happens is if you move your shadows up, which we all do, there is so much midtones that you're moving up at the same time that it starts to look like local contrast, which is what structure does, because there's just so much for it to work with and to bring up. And you can go, I think, too far with that, with your midtones, and like, not to get too far into like, how the eye sees and stuff, but I did a bunch study early on in art school about, you might know, Mark, this idea of Gestalt, which was originally a science of how we see. It wasn't a theoretical thing about things coming together. It was literally a German experiment and look into how the eye sees things. And contrast is beautiful to us because it helps delineate between things. It's how we come to understand the world, is through contrast. And so separating out my darks from my lights that drastically, I feel has a beautifying effect. And maybe it's only the way my eyes see it. But when you add all those midtones in there, in those shadows, I find that it has a reverse effect in terms of at least how I feel the image appeals to me. So
Sure.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle. And I feel like I probably could, and maybe I need to try the M9. That could be really fun.
Dude, it's like, so I had the M246. Like when the M10M came out, people were dumping their 246s and prices cratered. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to pick one up because
What's the difference in the look between 246 and M10M?
Totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel and I,
The
both feel
M10M was sort of, and this is from like a, built up from the M9M and the 246 were just like without the filters, without the color filters.
Mm-hmm.
So
they took the Bayer filter off.
Yeah.
Of
on
the
those,
color
and they
camera.
made it the monochrome version of those cameras. The M10M, the way it reads, like Adam was saying, the blacks are so thick, and
I've never seen blacks like the
it
blacks
almost
from the
creates
M10M.
lighting.
None more black.
What's up?
None more black.
None more black.
None more black.
Keep going. What, Daniel?
No. And
But you like the M10M then?
Oh,
I
yeah.
do like the M10M, and
Okay.
I like the flexibility I have with it.
So just one thing on the M9M, I compared it to the 246, and the way that it rendered detail, I found to be so much more aesthetically pleasing. Whereas to me, the 246 looked more like plasticky. And I don't mean that like, sorry, anybody who's got a 246, it's a wonderful camera. It didn't have like that really intensity. It didn't have the nuance. It didn't have like, kind of like an aesthetically beautiful vibe. And I even took like some identical photos, and I would look at the grays and I would look at the blacks, and without even thinking about it, I'm like, I don't even want to see the 246. Mm-hmm. But then Daniel so to me, like it's either the M9M or the M10M. The M10M is incredible, and I know I'm holding Daniel back here because he's dying to tell you this, but like literally you can shoot the M10M at like ISO 25,000 and it's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even beyond that, which unfortunately I got it pretty close to this whole Corona situation, so haven't really put it through the paces. But first day I got it was my mother-in-law's 70th birthday party, and I brought it to this dark restaurant. I put the 35 cron on it, and I was shooting at like 20, was it 12,500, 20,000, and that's where I think this camera really shines. You get a real medium format look when you're shooting at 160, 320, the low ISO speeds. Right. And then as you start introducing the grain, it really gets more character and gets a different character. It's almost like two different cameras in one. Wow. If I wasn't shooting weddings and I didn't need the buffer speed and some of the bells and whistles of the M10M, right, I'd probably stick with the M9M because I just love those files. But in anything that's not optimal in the conditions, the M9M's it's gonna.
It becomes mush, and it also, you get all this noise, and you get like those little white spots in the black areas.
It's a much more sensitive camera, much like the M9. In the right conditions, they're the best.
Yes.
But if you're doing documentary stuff and you're, in like a dark bar, dark backstage somewhere, or, whatever.
I mean, Daniel sent me the photos that he shot he shot it. You did a couple different things where you were in some jobs with it, horrendous lighting conditions. Okay. Like one of them was like this place, the Campbell, what was that place called?
That was the M9.
Was it?
Yeah, that was the M9.
No, I thought that was the M10M.
No, that was the M9.
Oh, shit, dude. Well, whatever. Anyway, the thing
I was shooting at it goes up to
the
10,000.
Campbell apartment.
The Campbell Apartments in Grand Central. It goes up to 10,000. The camera. I was shooting at 8,000.
Wow.
Just because they didn't allow flash in there. they like rented out a section. They didn't rent the whole place
There's
out.
no light. It's a hard. I did a shoot there once, and
Yeah.
it was just a fucking
I
nightmare.
was shooting at like a 60th and 80th,
Wow.
slowish shutter speed.
And the files looked beautiful.
And that's the
Wow.
only part of the M10M that sort of bothers me, is because it has the high resolution. Shooting at slower shutter speeds, you get some ghosting,
Right.
or you might get ghosting. Not every time.
So Daniel, what flash do you use when you do weddings with the M?
I use. What do I use?
Leica flash?
It's been that long since you shot a wedding.
No, what's the numbers are like 40.
SF40.
SF40. It has like it has the manual. I sort of love it.
Smaller one.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
flash. I love the form on the M bodies.
But it's the Leica flash.
Yes, it's the Leica flash.
Okay.
But there's no locking mode on any of the dials. So every
Ugh.
time I put that camera down,
Oh,
it hits something, and I have to quickly, you have to kind of go back to it.
Right.
I got the 58 for when I had the SL. And now
That's the bigger one.
that's the bigger one, and the 58 just doesn't really fit for me on the
it's
M bodies.
huge, man. Yeah.
So you don't like to do off-camera flash?
I typically don't. I can, and I have different Alien B setups, Rotolight setups that I can trigger from my Leica.
Okay.
But sometimes I drag the shutter and I kind of get that ambient light.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll set up some, depending on the
Do you do like a
location.
front curtain kind of like
I do a
zoom
front
thing?
curtain, yeah. So sometimes I'll just be at like f8,
Yeah,
eighth
that's my
of a
favorite.
second. It just, because sometimes some of
Do you
the
ever
things-
do? Oh, they don't have zooms though. Like I like to do at the.
Oh yeah, where you pull the
event.
zoom and it gives it that kind of.
It looks really cool.
I've
Yeah.
never
Love
done
that.
that. I've never done
I've
that.
done that a bunch.
With a front curtain, it's super. Or you can do rear curtain
I
too.
guess I
But
gotta get a zoom, huh?
It's one of the funnest things you can do with the zoom, like a 24-70 or a 16-35. 16-35 probably even better because you get a better view on the dance floor if you're up close to somebody or a couple.
What shutter speed do you need for that?
Slow it down like
Kind of slow.
30th or something,
Yeah.
right?
30th, yeah,
Yeah.
15th.
Yeah, 15th. Depends on what. I mean, now with like mirrorless, you can even go slow.
The
slow.
nice thing is, so the flash is capturing the dancer, and whatever they're doing, and then your zoom is just adding a motion blur to
Yeah,
the rest
cool.
of it. So it's all about how much you pull or push on your
And
zoom.
how fast.
Yeah,
And
I
how
guess
fast,
I
so
do
you-
this. I would do the similar thing, except I
You just physically,
physically move it, or I physically will
yeah,
twist it.
Yeah.
get
same effect.
certain-
same
yeah.
effect.
That's cool.
And people look at me like I'm fucking crazy. They're like, "Why? It's not going to come out."
That's not going to be good.
Yeah. He's like,
Trust
oh no,
me.
the photographer is having an issue. We need to call a medic.
That's epilepsy.
But I'm so interested in I'm shooting a lot of film these days, and I'm actually waiting for my M6 to come back from being
Mhm.
calibrated, hopefully today. But
To which lens?
no, I did rangefinder, just a rangefinder adjustment.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, not paired with a specific lens.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
And you're processing your own film, right?
I'm processing my own film, but it's also because I didn't start doing it when I
Yeah.
got into photography. It was all digital.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of enjoying stepping back and fucking up rolls and getting pissed and extremely frustrated for like months.
Yeah.
And I'm finally like in a groove of processing and scanning and
Color too.
the difference between my M3 and my M6, and even like getting the right colors from the portrait I'm shooting.
Yeah.
What was the Negative Lab Pro now I'm using in Lightroom,
Right.
to be able to pull those colors pretty accurately.
Yeah.
I love that app.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been listening in on your journey on this stuff, and it's been inspiring. Like some of the other people you've spoken to, I have the reverse experience, having started on it, and I actually first got into photography. I grew up next to a racetrack, and it happened to have the first strip camera ever made. which is the camera that sits at the finish line that does the photo finishes.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
And it was a big advancement in technology at the time. There's a great backstory to it, but it happened to be at the Del Mar racetrack, which was in rock throw distance from where I grew up. And as a kid, I used to roam around. In those days, you could kind of roam around places without
Right. Safety
And I-
last.
You can go out
Yeah.
in public. You can.
Yeah, you could go down
Yeah.
a street. You could go on a
You could
bicycle.
stand on a racetrack and
Yeah.
huff a bunch of
Um,
fumes.
So all the people that worked there that came to the meet in the summers would just sort of like take me with them up to the off-track betting area, and I wandered around into the photo finish booth one day, and that's where I sort of got my first whiff of film photography and developing. And this guy would develop, in 5 minutes because everyone's waiting, to know who won the race. And
Oh
so
shit, that's right.
it was high pressure
Yeah.
stuff, and it was beautiful. These beautiful images, these horses would come out, and that's where I sort of fell in love. And I was in a dark room by like 15, and then had a dark room in college. I was in art school, and there's no romance because it was the only way to do it. I mean, it was
Yeah.
nice to be in a dark room, but I
Mhm.
also had a sculpture studio and other things that I liked even more. But it's hard, as like it's difficult work. It's painstaking. And to be honest, like there's very few people who can dodge and burn really well, like without
Yeah.
naming names. There was a guy who came in and did a talk at Leica actually. And he like showed his work he'd been doing, and it was up on the walls, and he was doing it all himself. And it was like, well, I
Who-
can
who is
see the
this?
map.
Who is this guy?
I'm not saying.
No.
I'm not saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because
Be-
we have a guest coming on next week. Chuck Fishman, who's
That's
coming
not
on.
him.
No,
Yeah.
but was in San Francisco.
No, I'm not getting any
All right,
more
no,
details
never mind.
because I love this guy and I love his images.
Okay.
But his tech, I could see the edges of his masks,
Oh,
and I could,
Yeah.
there was just a lot of
This
stuff
is
in
why
there
I'm
that
saying.
maybe he needed
Yeah.
a new prescription.
he's a wonderful human being.
No, it's true. I'm not.
But it's
joking.
hard. It's really hard. Yeah, who knows? I mean, it's hard to see in those dark rooms.
When I first realized I needed like reading glasses, I mean, it was like I was like, oh, I was looking at some of my images, and everything that I shot that day was like, nice
Yeah.
and crisp on the back of the camera, and we had this incredible light. And I was shooting I was shooting for like this small like fashion designer in the courtyard behind his building in Greenwich Village that had like this shaft of light, and the buildings like had this incredible architectural details where like this one little area was like all brick, and it kind of came to a point and the light was hitting it right, and I was using reflectors. I brought all these lights, but like just reflectors made the light so cool, and it just gave it like this unbelievably unique look.
Yeah.
And we had this great rhythm, the whole thing. And I get it home and I bring it onto the computer, and I'm like, oh my God, they're like all soft. And that's when I realized,
Yeah.
okay, it's not the camera.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's hard to see.
Yeah,
As we get older.
like a decade ago, and I was like, uh-oh,
Yeah, I'm
I think I had like,
actually in need of glasses pretty soon as well.
do it, man.
So
It'll make life a lot better. I can.
it's quite easy focusing on a rangefinder, but when you get to like a normal DSLR, it really gets a bit harder. And I just want to ask Josh, do you shoot any medium format, or do you just stick to 35 millimeter?
35. I mean, I would love to do medium format. It's always felt like something
Do
that
it.
was above me.
Do
you know,
it.
and
No
beyond.
way, man.
Above you.
Look at your
Yeah.
shit, man. Your freaking work is totally bang on. I mean, it's
thank
just
you.
another tool. You're just gonna shoot with it, and you're like, oh, dude, look at all the detail.
I would love nothing more. Honestly, it's been cost prohibitive, and
Yeah, rent it.
and I've been a little bit scared, but I would love to do it. And are you talking like phase one? What are you talking about when you say jump into it? Or are you saying
So yeah, basically, I don't know. You could start. I mean, we've all used the GFX, which is amazing. I'm a huge fan. That's
And
probably
now there's
my
the
main
GFX 100, which
Yeah,
focuses amazingly.
but I would also just put in a medium format film. I mean, phase one is out of the question for me at least at the moment. So
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I'll get into it. Oh, you know what? I wanted to mention this. One of you guys had talked about a really good idea for a camera, of putting a digital back on a film camera,
Right.
which I thought was that was you, Daniel. Yeah, I thought that was really inventive. I also have an idea that I wanted to share with you guys. I've never said out loud. Tell me if you think this is a good idea. So in cameras, they have panoramas now in cameras, which I love as a feature. Like when I use my plastic fruit, Fujifilm or whatever it is, that's one of my favorite things to do, is just do, because it has a little bit of that, like medium format kind of look. What I've never seen a camera do is be able to stitch more in the Bezier style. So do a 3x3 grid.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be amazing to be able to do in camera? So put on like 1.4.
Yeah.
And then and have it do
it has to. It has to somehow. I mean, it's definitely possible.
I think it's possible. I think the demand is minimal.
Right.
I thought it was.
Are there programs now that you can throw your
you can do it,
photos in, and
dude, you can do it in Photoshop. It takes no time.
Okay.
True.
Yeah. I never tried, but
it works most of the time. I had some issues, especially with the stuff I really wanted to come out great, and Photoshop just didn't align it. And I'm like,
yeah. Well, that's photography.
Guess that's why.
Yeah. Well, and you have to really
his own method going on, right?
Yeah, I've played with it in the past. I mean, it's a cool technique, but you do have to do it right. That's for sure.
But I feel like that's the closest. Like when I try to do it in Photoshop, I get real painstaking about it, because you got to lock down your settings, and God forbid one square's exposed differently than the other. So
right.
But I feel like I really like that look, and that's the one look that I've never been able to like really nail down, which I always attribute to medium format. I don't know.
The thing about medium format is that if you started shooting with it, you would instantly recognize, the difference between 35. I mean, just, looking at a lot of the work that you do, you'll just be able to get kind of like even more of a three-dimensional look. And you also get like such an incredible level of detail where you throw your focus. So, it's not for everybody. I mean, some people, like, they shoot with it and they're like, oh shit, that's like way too much detail. But if you pair it with the right glass so that your lenses are not like overly clinically sharp, it can be incredibly beautiful. I mean, you can
just get the 50 Summilux and
it'd be done.
Like for me, like the day I fell in love.
Here we go again.
No, the day I fell in love with my M10 and the 50 Summilux, I was doing a campaign shoot, and I had the GFX system that I owned in my bag, and the M10 and the 50, and I just never picked up I picked it up for 3 frames, and I put it back, and I was like, look to me was on par and better than
Daniel. You can put the Summilux on the GFX.
Yeah, why would you? The thing, Josh, is that like, because you shoot so much movement.
Yeah.
The medium format would be very painstaking for you, because it doesn't, like, unless you were to buy or rent the GFX 100, which actually does like focus tracking and has like phase detect autofocus and in-body image stabilization. Most of the other traditional medium format cameras like have like maybe 1 focus point, maybe 3 if you're lucky. The buffer is incredibly slow between images, so that if you're shooting motion and you're really trying to get like nail things, like your workflow, if it is a certain way for motion shooting, it'll really change that dramatically.
Yeah.
But the payoff, the benefit might be worth it. I mean, it's hard to know.
Well, I think I have different kinds of shoots, some of which would be difficult to do with that process you're talking about, but some of which would be way better to do with that. And I don't use autofocus hardly at all. Anyways. So for more of my setup shots and the stuff that has a little more chiaroscuro and feels more Renaissance-y, and like those are setup shots that you know, they're moving, but they're moving slowly,
Mhm.
and I'm giving direction. We're going back and being like, oh, let's try this again. Let's try this again. That would be amazing for medium format. It would be incredible.
Yeah.
And I would love the extra information, and even more the rendering of light, which is really what those shots are about. You know, is you know, how the light hits the skin and what it does to it, and that would be, yeah, medium format would be amazing. I just have to get my hands on one.
Have you ever gotten your hands, going from medium to a crop sensor for a second, have you ever gotten your hands on the CL?
Nope, I haven't shot it. Why? Do you?
I
like
have
that?
fallen in love with it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Just for its rendering?
Its rendering, its sharpness, its character, especially the black and white mode. I mean,
really?
Because now what I do is a lot of it's just with the Leica app, I'm just lazy as shit, and I'm just like camera to phone and sending it around, whatever.
Yeah. I like
but
that flow.
I have the 23 and I have so it's like the 30. I have a 35 basically and a 50.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the 18, which is the equivalent of like the Q, you know, the 28 is the pancake.
Yeah.
And it's so small and it's so powerful. And I have the Fuji X Pro 3, the different Fujis, and trying to just find a system, an autofocus system that fit with my M cameras. And and the quality is just, it blows me away every time.
I'll have to check.
And I don't see much about it, you know.
Yeah, no, it's not one of their major.
It's a quirky camera because it doesn't have any ports, so you can't tether with it. You know, it has one little tiny battery, like the old Q battery. It has one card slot. It's like, it's so small that the first time you pick it up, you honestly can't believe that it's that small.
Yeah.
But Daniel sent me stuff like that shot you just recently did of your niece. Like,
it's in the kitchen window and the 35-1.4.
And it's gorgeous.
The black and white mode. I mean,
Send it to me. I want to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't tell me that it was the CL, like, you could have told me it was.
Well, that's also part of the fun game we play sometimes. We're like,
guess,
you know,
the
here's a
camera
picture,
and
guess
lens.
the camera and lens. You know, sometimes D90, sometimes it's, you know.
Daniel, can you send it in the chat here? I want to see this thing.
You know, we actually, let me try. I did upgrade it. Let me see.
I can send it too, because I still have it.
Yeah.
Oh, I did upgrade it. Now you can send files.
Oh yeah.
Look at that.
I see a little file thing here.
Yeah, I mean, just the tonality of it and the focus, I thought was just so incredible. But which also kind of goes back to, you know, the best tool is what you make of it. You know, it's like, emotionally, yes, I know that I feel much more connected to shooting my M bodies and M glass. But, you know, I look back at some of like stuff that I've shot, like, you know, I like my D3S, the Nikon. That sensor was incredible. And it's funny because I posted something recently, and another photographer who we're going to have on here next week, he posted something about how there is like this cult about that sensor, which I guess I didn't even know.
Which sensor?
The D3.
The D3. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, you know, those files hold up now, and that was like, you know, 10-year-old camera or so with.
You know, it's interesting that these communities develop around these moments of time. There are people who feel this way about the D700 or D750. Who feel like Nikon, you know, has not been as good since then. It's just fascinating to me.
Same era. So the D3S was that same era. And I actually, my two cameras of choice that I owned simultaneously was the D3S and the D700.
I think that's why people liked it. Yeah, it felt the most like professional grade for some reason, or at least it matched with
Daniel. I don't know if you sent these to the group. You might have just sent them to me.
Oh yeah,
I only sent them to
Can
you.
Forward them.
Fuck, I don't want to.
Well, where it says two, you just have to change that to whomever, whether it's individual or everyone.
Got it. I am the least technical person around. Did it now go to everyone, or do I got to resend it?
You got to resend it.
All right. This isn't the one we're talking about, but this is the one that's on my desktop. And
do you want me to send the one that we're talking about? Do you mind?
Yeah, send it. Sure. But this is just a black and white. My son looking out the window.
Great shot.
You know,
downloading.
And that's 9. You sent a huge file. That's like 9 megabytes. Speaking of not being technical.
Oh yeah, I did. Because that's what it comes out. That's what the Leica app does. You know.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's the other one. Okay, let me check it out.
But these are just
That's really shallow too. Is that 1.4?
That's the 35-1.4. Yeah.
But the grain, the tonality, like it looks.
And I bumped the contrast up for my in-camera JPEGs. I do a high contrast, and that's about it. But
I mean, I can say that, Daniel has sent me a pretty wide variety of images he shot with the CL, and from seeing it, like, I would buy a CL, and because it's just that good. And I've picked it up in my hand, and like it's so small. And I think that's the other thing. It's like I used to have in my bag. I would have a medium format body, like a Hasselblad or a Phase 1, and then I would have my Nikon D3S or equivalent, like pro body. So if I needed the speed, and I was doing like rapid motion, I would have the camera for speed. And then if I needed the high resolution or for portraits, whatever. Now it's like, I want everything to be small. And the CL has convinced me that it's incredibly.
That's really why I actually
capable.
got rid of the Q2. I mean, I was doing a trade for the 35-1.4, but I was like, I love the CL. I'm able to put different lenses on it. The Q2 is amazing for what it is, but I still need an autofocus option that gave me different lengths. And I know, there's not a ton of lenses available for it, but enough that it does the job I need to do. And I was even doing like 12,005, like stupid numbers that I don't usually shoot at. But just to like, now with this time when we have nothing to do, basically, we're just like testing shit out. It's like, can I shoot this at 20,000? Like it goes to 50,000. Like, let me try.
Right.
Like,
and
how
does it
bad
look
is it?
good? And is it special?
Yeah,
Is there good
it's
grain? Like I think it's
That's
great.
why when
to be
like
able-
I'm waiting by the bat phone when they get the first phone call for their job, you're like, I'm fucking there, man.
and I can shoot 20,000 all day long.
Yeah.
Josh,
Well, I've always believed that I choose based on scenario, not on camera, like the lens choice and the camera pairing and what I take out of the house with me or what I bring in the house with me is always sort of like scenario based. So, and part of that is, I think a lot of the same reasons we've been talking about here all over, which is in any given scenario, there's a thing I like and maybe don't like about shooting, so if I'm traveling, for example, I don't like switching lenses, and I don't like, there's just a lot of things that bother me when I'm traveling because I'm trying to be in the moment of travel. So when it's family travel, if it's work travel, it's different. But I want to, yes, I want great images, but not at the expense of missing out on fun things. Like
100%.
I like to run around.
What I find so annoying is when I have my camera with my family and we're going around and sometimes you just want a picture of your family and you ask this person walking by and they're like, you can't do that if you have an M. 0%.
It's a bit hard.
I've tried.
0%.
Yeah, let me explain zone focusing to you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you got a 21 Elmar and you
I guess
zone
like
focus
find my eye. Okay, fine. Now make sure you see two images. Like make sure they line up and don't rock back and forth.
Well, the first thing that people do is they hold the camera away from their head and they look at the back of the screen, thinking that's how they're going to take the picture.
But with the Q, you click.
People don't even know how to use like an optical viewfinder anymore. That's like a novelty.
Yeah,
it is pretty funny. Yeah, I don't even bother. Like, it's funny. I needed a new headshot for the To the Moon. Because Daniel and I are collaborating on doing some wedding photography, Dream Team, and
awesome.
I see Joshua Rose does that as well.
What?
No, I'm
wedding.
I googled, and it said Joshua Rose, and I was like, maybe that's like he's, and then I was like,
no.
Anyway,
that's another one.
So I went outside with the M, and I don't remember. I was like maybe at like 2.8 or something. I wanted to make it easy, and I had my wife and I standing at certain points, and like I put like a stick down and everything, and it just didn't work out. So then I just gave her the
stick down. I love it.
So we would know exactly where to stand. So the
right. It's all in focus.
Refocused, handed her the camera. But so anyway, so we ended up using the Sony for for those shots, and they came out amazing.
Like
and we-
I just look at it and it attaches to your eye and takes a picture. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's a easy mode.
But yeah, and she'd never actually even picked up her shot with the Sony, and like all the shots came out great. But
So, Josh, I want to ask you. You mentioned that you have some Zeiss Glass as well.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah. Let me show you this
Like
setup.
my
Hold on.
eyeglasses right here, Zeiss.
You got the Zeiss Glass? Cool.
Yeah,
Zeiss eyeglasses.
yeah. Zeiss makes
I-
eyeglasses.
What?
I had no idea.
Yeah,
Didn't
So-
know.
they have microscopes and
Yeah, they do, but I didn't know they make glasses as well.
So this is my Nikon
Nice.
with my pro photo thing on there. So this is my Zeiss 85. It's a 1.4.
Yeah.
And it's a fairly famous, well-known lens. And I have done every lens test imaginable, specifically for bokeh or out of focus rendering. I've compared this to maybe not the 50 lux actually, which I should, but every lens I've ever had. And with apologies to it's far and away the best rendering. And I could show you some side by sides I've done with it. It's
Is it
first
an
of all,
I love that because I've never even.
yeah. First of all, it's 85, which already has an advantage because it's just a little
Yeah,
bit
of course,
longer,
yeah.
and so it's not fair because I do it to 50s and other things. But whatever, like a lens is a lens. So it is. I don't know what they did with that lens, but you go in other discussion forums and stuff, and I think most of the world agrees that's just about the best out of focus lens.
Which lens is it?
It's the Zeiss 85. It's a manual focus, which again, I like manual better. And
It's not the Otis.
No, that's not
No.
the Otis. That's the more classic one, more classic
Yeah.
rendering. Well,
yeah,
When's it from?
What is it called? What's it?
you
what's
can
it-
buy it. It's the ZF2, I think. 85.
yeah.
ZF2.
This is ZF, but there's probably it says planar ZF.
85 planar ZF,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been on my list for.
Do they make it
years,
for
and I
Sony,
haven't
or is
gone-
it just for Nikon?
You, no, not just Canon, Nikon, but you can adapt it.
Yeah,
You could probably even adapt it to the M, with if you use
That won't
the
be
live
top
view.
heavy.
Anyway, so you're manually is that and you're manually focusing, but that looked like a DSLR.
It is. That's
So
my.
how are
Nikon
you
D850.
you just waiting for like the little dot to show up when you hit focus, or how are you doing?
Oh no, I miss 50% of my shots. So I just what I'll do. I'll look at, and it needs to get paired because I think I like to do I like to get something with letters on it and put it in an angle.
Right.
That's how I usually see if it's not actually, is it back focusing? If it's back focusing or not.
Mhm.
And I think this one is a teeny bit.
Right.
So what I'll do is, shoot a couple, I'll just move it in and out a little bit and burst a teeny,
Right.
if I'm at all worried about
So you'll
it.
just fine tune it. You'll have some that maybe a little bit. Yeah, I've had to do that before on shoots, where the camera says it's got focus confirmation, but it doesn't. The lens is a little bit out.
Yeah. And I don't even use focus peaking on here. So I wouldn't,
Wait,
that
I
might
don't think
actually
you-
be a good idea.
You could probably
Oh.
do focus peaking in live view, though.
Maybe in live view. Yeah. But then you can't shoot as
I mean, the
fast.
thing that's good about
Yeah.
live view is that you're always going to nail focus. Live view doesn't lie. I mean, because
Right.
even that
That's
35 that I just sent out to get looked at, I was able to nail focus in live view, but I couldn't nail focus optically, and I tried it on 3 different rangefinders. So,
Right.
and I know that they're all.
But they were telling you that it worked. That it was.
They
fine.
did on the preliminary test before they put it on the machine.
And now you haven't heard back from them.
I'm gonna reach out to them. These guys are just giving me such a hard time, man. It's just,
It's because he got too good of a deal on his 35, man.
I
So
did.
you gotta give him a hard time.
I really did. I kind of.
He paid a con price for.
It's like
Zoom Lux.
anytime that someone says they got a good deal like that, you're just like, you're lying. You just want to not
no,
say you coughed up, $4,500.
Right.
like half that. So, Josh, I noticed you're also a Leica Academy instructor.
Yeah.
What's involved with that?
Well, so I've had this relationship with Leica for a number of years. It started with, I reached out to them on a trip to to Eastern Europe one year, years ago. I'm going to say like 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And I told them I was going. At the time, they were just starting to get into social media a little bit more heavily, and they just I didn't see anything like this, like a takeover. No one had done a takeover, and so I just reached out and I said, I'm a Leica user, and I'm heading to Budapest, and then I'm going to be traveling down into Romania. What if I did a takeover? And
Wow.
they were like, yeah, that sounds awesome.
Wow.
They looked at my work and just sort of, I don't think that would ever happen today.
Right.
It was just being early. And so that sort of started the relationship. And then I've done little things with them, when they have events in LA, like at Luftke Cult, I sort of led a little group around, and, Kieran came out and some other folks, from the Leica team, and we're sort of there. And so I've just sort of been around and hung out with them. And then the Academy, Tom and Phil do the Academy stuff, asked if I would organize something specifically around the movement photography and dance photography. And so that's sort of how they structure it, is they try to get people to do different things so that, you can appeal to different audiences. And, I probably could have gone in and done a street photography thing or a portrait thing or whatever too, but they've, they got people better known for that kind of stuff. And so we're organizing one specifically around dance, and where people can come. We'll probably bring a dancer or do, I have this, I'm an artist in residence at the LA Dance Project. And so it could very well be there or with a subset of that group, and we'll bring some people in. And then if the way I'd like to do it is sort of like a weekend thing, where we can shoot one day, process the next day, and so you can get kind of like the full experience of that. And so I get to sort of like get a little deeper into what it's like to shoot movement and shoot dancers, and it's there's just a lot involved in it, but I also think it's a really great way to exercise as a photographer, because it's challenging. It necessitates a certain like rapport and relationship and direction, and it's also a co-creation, collaboration, because the dancer is going to have their own ideas about things, and then you're sort of jibing off of that, and that creates this really interesting set dynamic. So it's just going everything from sort of the conceptual approach to to the processing of it, and and in that process you cover a lot of things. And then what happens with Leica is a Leica expert will be there, who, if the questions start to get very technical, not that I couldn't do it, but it can sometimes go into rabbit holes if they're really talking about some deep setting stuff or need help with some specifics, then there'll be someone there who's more of has technical expertise will guide them through it. So that's usually how those go.
Very cool.
Or if they simply just have a question about a 50 Summilux, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I just send them to you.
Nah, you want to go to Adam or Mark. All technical stuff, please go to them.
I'm not that technical, man. I just
it's probably Daniel and me.
I just set the bar very low, I guess.
Josh, when you compose with the 21, do you use a viewfinder or live view, or just, I don't know, maybe you're used to that you're...
Yeah, I mean, you have to accept that, you're not seeing everything, but, like I grew up that way. So it's not a big deal. I don't go crazy about that stuff, but I use the VisiFlex. And so, I'm usually like this, I have this thing on here, and then I'm a big fan of looking down. Like I would have been a great guy to have a Brownie camera.
Or Hasselblad.
Or Hasselblad. So I'm usually like this, which is also really helpful if you're shooting low angle and angling up, because it's a horrible, like I hate when there's photos of me photographing, but this is usually my like my stance. I'm usually like this.
Yeah.
That's how I like
it. It's so interesting. I really want to. I never tried an EVF.
We call that the crouching tiger.
It really is.
It's funny because I have that VisiFlex and I never use it.
Why don't you send it over to me, Adam? Come on.
Yeah, send it over.
Come on. UPS.
Well, I mean, look, I've used it.
I
for,
might use it. I mean, I could possibly want to use it.
I've used it for some of the automotive stuff when I really want to set my focus very specifically when I'm trying to, shoot like a car, and I want to set it on a very specific part of the car. And like, even though like I think I can do it optically, I know I can do it with the VisioFlex. I definitely could see for shooting wide. And in fact, even with the 75, like that's kind of hard to compose. So maybe I'll start using
How's the
a little
refresh
more.
rate on it? Like if you move the camera,
It's decent. It's better than the M240 for sure.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you can get around to it.
Yes.
But the one shot that's one of my favorite shot of yours is where you have these rings at the playground in Venice Beach, and you have people in between there. Did you do that also with the 21 or?
That I'd have to think back. That was an early shot.
Maybe it was Cron. I don't know.
It might have been 35. It was either 35 or 21. But it looks. I'm trying to think of it in my mind. It seems 21-ish to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's like, as you probably know, because I'm shooting a lot of automotive stuff. It's always inspiring to look at somebody's work that's totally different. That does something totally opposite of what you do. So yeah, that's why I always enjoy looking at your work. So.
Appreciate that. I mean, you and I have been following each other on Instagram for a while, and I feel the same. Overall, I really like to look at work that isn't too similar to mine. For a lot of reasons. One, it can be painful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But the other is, like you said, like you get influenced by things. I also follow some people who draw or who do painting or other things. And I just really like to be influenced, by other art forms and other approaches to stuff. It always like adds an element, and I'm always trying to approach things a little more conceptually anyway. And so I have another account where it's only sort of like that kind of like high influence stuff for me that I'll sort of get off my own feed and just use that to kind of like lurk and be inspired. And it's such a different feeling because, there's photographers out there on social media who are doing like really super high impact, what I just sort of refer to as travel photography,
Right.
They'll call it urban photography or art or whatever they want to call it. But they're essentially going to different parts of the world and these amazing locations and doing this incredible stuff. And then there's this other element of Instagram photography, which is models and, or as I like to call it, softcore pornography. And
there's a lot of that.
Yeah. And between the two of those, you can go down these rabbit holes and it can really skew you and affect you. And it can make you want to shoot that. Like it can be like, oh, like I need to head to that place, in Bhutan or something. And
right.
I find that to just find another experience where I'm still looking at photography, but it's not that stuff. And so this other feed, and I highly recommend, if you guys haven't done this, to like set something where you're only following like 50 people maybe.
Right.
And so everything that streams up and I follow some like fine art, like curated feeds and things like that.
So you're curating what you're seeing by doing this.
Yeah.
So that you're not because it's true. Like, like on my accounts, like I have people that I admire, and they can be in all the different genres. Like you said, like the people that like shoot, the beautiful people, the people that shoot automotive stuff. And then there's just like friends of mine who, I may not have necessarily wanted to follow their work because it doesn't really appeal to me from a creative standpoint, but they're friends and I want to follow their lives and whatever.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying like, okay, you know what? There's too much noise. I'm just going for signal here. I just want to plug in and just get something, kind of juicy that I can sink my teeth into without all the other distractions. And I think that that's really, really smart. And I think that that's a great mentality to almost take toward almost anything that you do. Like an example that I can use similarly is like when you were talking about like these places you want to visit. It's like sometimes you go somewhere wherever it may be. You could just go to Times Square in New York, or you go to Venice Beach or something, and you see all this stuff going on. You're like, wow, there's people working out, there's people on roller skates, there's seagulls in the sky, and like you're like click, 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 but the challenge, and I tell this to people all the time when I'm talking to like new photographers, wedding photographers. I'm like, you know what, go out today. Number one, bring only one lens, like we've talked about, so you're not like you're crowding your mind with too many choices, and pick something thematic, so that at the end of the day, I want you to end up with 6, maybe 10 images at the most that you can present in a cohesive way, so that they embody some sort of a mini portfolio that documents the experience of that day. So go out with the intent. You know what I mean? And I think that it's so easy with social media for us to just scroll,
Oh yeah.
get into this like kind of loop, blah, 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 just like just barrage with information. But finding these ways and putting these parameters in place, I think is really good practice. And I love this idea of having this like kind of tight curated feed, so that all the noise is minimized.
Well, and
I
also
probably
it's
just follow the same shit because it's just cameras and tattoos for me. So, I don't know what that says.
yeah. But no, it's also you're designing your own experience in a way, and if you can set aside a time just for inspiration time, like it's one thing to be scrolling social media, and that has some really valuable stuff too for your friends and just see what's going on in the world, and a sense of what's happening, like especially right now as everyone's inside. I'm getting it's almost like what it used to be like to listen to the radio for me, where like the DJ would come in and they would just start talking, and it would just be like, well, now like if there was an emergency, that person would let me know, or they're sort of talking about the events of the day, and I kind of like that, like just finger on the pulse of what's going on. But when it's about filling my head with inspiration and ideas, I think that curated experience and that that way of going through that is 100% guaranteed to make you want to go create and find your own themes and ideas. That's you should find that. I think it's important.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice to people, because I think it's such a difficult time for everybody right now. I mean, look, some of us have it better than others. We're not like worrying about where we're going to get our next meal or things like that. But all that aside, being able to kind of maintain and having purpose, and then taking it even further and kind of putting some structure into our lives. Like, it's the whole thing that I'm saying. It's like, getting dressed, getting to work, but then finding purpose in what you're doing, instead of just endlessly scrolling or just feeling like, what's the point of this? It's like you're basically doing self-development, and kind of it's like going to the gym. It's like you're working on your craft, you're working on your skills, you're doing these reps, let's say.
It's like self-preservation.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love these nuggets, and I think that these are terrific nuggets that I want to add to my repertoire, and I think that other people hopefully can pick up as well, because I have found myself in these moments of just wanting to like kind of disappear from everything and just being like scroll, and it's like I'm not getting anything. It's like time is just kind of ticking away, and it's like, why am I doing this? So having more purpose and intent is really a good thing.
Yeah. So what? How are you guys dealing with not being able to get out right now?
The thing here in Europe, at least where I'm based in Germany, it's they're kind of starting to open the shops again. So this is the first week that the shops are open.
Oh wow!
So we can go out at the moment, but it was pretty frustrating before, actually. Like, especially if you're somebody that's creative or that likes to shoot outside. For me,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not the person that like sits inside and starts using a macro and shooting stuff.
Right.
So I was kind of frustrated, and
Yeah.
of course, as all of us, I got a lot of cancellations for projects, so it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
But I'm staying positive, so I'm
Yeah.
really hoping that things will go back to normal. Hopefully
Yeah.
soon.
And are you guys finding like now that it feels like maybe the curve is flattening, that you're like about to start scheduling shoots and
No.
stuff? No.
Definitely not.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet here as well, but I think it might be a late summer, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, I'm in the New York, Daniel and I are in the New York metro area. And, I'm sure, if you follow the news, like we are nowhere near out of the woods.
Yeah.
It's, we got a ways to go. And then once things go back, it's not going to be like, just like, okay, come to my workplace and shoot, 50 of my people, or let's get a set of 30 people together and shoot this advertising or this magazine thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the nature of things are going to be. I think that we're going to have to be a lot more clever about how we kind of go reintegrate, and even with our jobs, how we reintegrate. So how about yourself? I mean, what's going on with that?
I had an immediate desire, as I think a lot of photographers did, like fairly early into it, to like go out and see what it looked like to shoot streets with no one in it. And part of it is the photojournalist in me, and part of it is, just like you've seen these images in your head, and it's like, wow, there's this unique opportunity to maybe go shoot empty streets. And then suddenly I saw that happening everywhere.
Right.
I saw articles in the New York Times about it, and I saw, like other feeds about it, and some like skateboarder went and did a movie like with him skating on freeways in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I saw that. That was incredible.
It was amazing. Although there must have been some post work done on that, but
yeah. Oh, definitely.
But it suddenly turned me. I looked at it and I was like, I don't know, this kind of feels wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also I had to check myself about like, what, is that my work? Like, is that what I want to do and I want to put in the world? Like that's never really been my theme, necessarily. Like my themes, and I like to work in conceptual places. And so, I like pulled back, and I decided, I wasn't going to try to do new stuff necessarily right now, but I have been going, and what I did is I put a year back, and I just sort of looked at what shoot did I do a year ago. And as the days progress, I kind of move up on my shoots. Like, so now what was a year ago, and now what was a year ago. And I'm revisiting those shoots. And what it turns out is that time in my life, I was shooting upwards of 3 shoots a week and sometimes more. And it's the nature of dance photography and this sort of like, there's a constant need for content. Plus I was artist in residence at Cal Arts at that time in the dance program, and all of their instructors had shows coming up. So I was shooting them constantly. So consequently, what you do, as you guys know, in a really fast workflow is you select your main selects, and then you kind of let the rest is kind of the rest. And when you're working fast and you're doing 3-4 shoots a week, that process gets really fast. Like, it's like I use the star system in Lightroom. And, what I do is I basically hit 3 stars for any photo I like. And I hit, which is a 3, and I hit 7, which is a yellow color coding for something that I think is really good. And there's usually no more than 5 to 10 yellows in any given shoot, sometimes a lot less. And so I'm going through really fast, and I'm 3-7, 3-7, 3-7, 3-7, and just like really going through it that quick. And so what I've done is gone back and just removed all of that coding. And I'm just going through it again with slower, fresher eyes, and being like, okay, let's like get into this. And what I discovered was a couple things. One is there's shots I totally missed because they're subtle. They're like subtly really good. And their gestures and movements, they weren't the big apex moment, but they showed humanity in an interesting way, and I missed it. And then the other thing is that with dance, sometimes I'm bursting, and I discovered that at 9 frames a second, I'm actually making short films, and I hadn't really thought of it that way.
Oh, yeah.
And what I've discovered is that when I bring it in, and I've been taking this time to get a lot better at editing and making video, is that 9 frames a second turned into 24 frames a second is a really interesting look that you don't get very often. And I actually think it's a fun thing for photographers. Obviously, you can shoot a lot faster if you got a Sony or something. I can't shoot that fast, but to make these little short films, it feels a little bit like old, like 9mm film stuff.
Right. A little choppy.
Yeah, it's choppy and it's actually faster. What most people are doing is they're shooting high speed at like 100 frames a second or 60 frames a second, and then they're putting that into 24 frames a second, and it's really slow. This is the opposite move. So it's actually people moving a little faster and jitterier,
Wow.
and then I've been doing stuff with that. And so just like using those shoots to like delve into photography a little bit more and spending my time doing that. So
Interesting. That's really cool. It's funny, like one of my fashion clients, we do a lot of this, like they call it rapid frame shooting. And it was the same idea where it's like, you do the rapid frame stuff and then they would make these little films of it.
Yeah.
And it's nice because it's like, it has a certain look and, for showcasing the goods on a model, it's not just, you get like this kind of 3-dimensional, view or 2-dimensional view, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm sure for your work, it's pretty exciting too. It's interesting. I actually created something like that recently for a promo for a workbook. And they were reaching out and they're like, give us your shot. And I said, you know what? I took this playwright and no, he's like, whatever. He's a theater guy. And I just took a whole bunch of photos because he was such a dynamic guy and such a great personality. And I created like this GIF of it, and it came out like 100 times better than I thought. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how when you're kind of in this position, like it forces you to be creative.
Yeah.
But I also love that idea about going back because I think all of us have done that. I've gone back and like seen shots that I've missed and just overlooked and been like, yeah. So
I do that a lot also, like for travel photography. Usually I for some reason do it in the evening instead of watching TV or whatever. And then just go back through old shoots or old travel shoots. And like you said, just go through everything that you haven't rated before. And there's usually some really interesting keepers that you can see with fresh eyes. So
I think it's a nice way. I've found myself like really appreciating photography in that sense, but also because I do miss being out there and I miss the interactions with people, especially very creative people. I kind of live for that on set. There's a feeling when you're collaborating with someone, I'm sure you guys get this too with various people you work with, but like there's this moment when you're shooting and especially if there's music on and things are happening where I feel like life doesn't get any better than this. And like that is very specific for me to creating with another creative person, and not having that is a real, like, just like, it's hard. It's like, this is a very like dark place that I feel is underlying, because while it's really great to explore and get better at the medium and find these things, that is really where my passion is in doing that, and not being able to do that's hard. But I think a lot of us are feeling that, like we're all people who our work relies on getting out there and having people in front of us and jibing in that way. So yeah, I really feel for the photographers right now. I mean, I feel like for everyone, obviously, photographers are just one subset of humans who are all going through something difficult. And as I like to say, we're all alone and all together at the same time. But in particular, I think those of us who rely on this collaboration, I just think it's a difficult time for us,
Yeah, it is
definitely.
very much so.
Yeah, man. Well, wow.
Do we have to wrap up?
We don't have to wrap up. We can go on all day.
Oh, I don't mind keeping going. I mean, I know it brought us to like a real, like deep, like, okay, well, goodbye part of this, but there's a lot of other things we probably didn't touch on.
Well, we can always do it again. I mean, this doesn't have to be the be all end all of conversations. Because obviously we have a lot to talk about. We barely even touched on your dance photography, which I would never in a million years discount, because to me it's such a specific art form, and I love looking at your work, because Mark brought your work to my attention, and this happens all the time. I mean, thankfully there's like a lot of us out there, particularly in New York and LA. So it's just nice to kind of get turned on to other people's work. And, like you, it's like, I like to look at people that do work that differs from the kind of work that I do, because I like you also find it very inspiring, seeing the way somebody else sees the world and the way somebody else sees humanity. I think that
Mhm.
was a really key thing that you mentioned when you were mentioning how you went back into your work, is you used the word humanity. And I think that that's kind of like a very important thing for us to not lose sight of right now. And when you were talking about how just photographing the empty streets, that hit me so hard very recently, because like my wife and I were very lucky. We have this like little cottage in Connecticut, about an hour and a half from New York City, even though we have a little apartment in Manhattan. And we had to do a run. We had to go into the city and get a bunch of stuff.
Mhm.
And we live right near one of the big hospitals that's managing the crisis. And when we drove by, there was one of those refrigerator trucks with the tent in front of it. And
Oh,
oh my God, like I
Yeah.
swear, like I literally, like, everything just like melted inside of me. And then maybe a nurse or somebody who was in full scrubs and everything kind of looked at me, and that look, like, it feels like it happened. The whole thing feels like this little slow motion movie. And it's
mhm.
so burned in like the frontal cortex of my brain. Like I can't erase that thought. And I had my camera like with me. I was like thinking like, yeah, I'll just take some shots of like, people in masks and empty streets. And at that moment I realized I can't shoot any of this stuff. Like this is
Yeah.
I feel the
just,
same way.
it's too
Actually.
sacred. It's too dark. And yeah, so
Yeah.
I know how you feel about it. So it's like, I'm just looking for other forms of inspiration. And a lot of it is inward, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in how this will change us as
Yeah.
photographers too. You mentioned the kind of like, there's the logistical things, which is, boy, it's going to be hard to convince anyone to go be in a group right
Yeah.
now. But then there's also, I think, just like what's important to us, which is something that I think we're all being forced to deal with, sitting in our homes and thinking about ourselves and the world. And so it'll be interesting to see if our work changes at
I think it's
all.
going to have to, because even the way that we collaborate, I think, is going to have to change. I mean, just think about it. Like on a shoot, like it wouldn't be unusual for me to have like, two assistants, a digitech, and that's just me bringing in a stylist, and maybe, so me personally, I would be bringing in like, a small group of people. Then there'd be, creative director and, art director and
Client.
stylist assistant. And, you kind of drill the whole thing out, and you realize, okay, there's 25, 30 people on set. And then all the people that work at the studio, and then the people in the EQ department, and then the catering people. So when you put a shoot together, it's like there's like 30, 40, 50 people all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
and then
I
Daniel
did.
shooting weddings,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard
Yeah.
as well.
events.
Yeah. I did a shoot that was sort of an ongoing set of things. It just got published, which is nicely in a magazine out here called La La Magazine, of course.
Right.
But
Oh.
it's about, I had the opportunity to go shoot on Skid Row, and because
Wow,
I was doing it in a relationship with an organization that has a needle exchange down there, I had way further access and ability to actually meet people and talk with them and be with them. And so it's called Intent, and I was literally going inside tents on Skid Row.
Wow.
And it was a thing I wanted to keep doing, because you start to have these relationships with these people, and their lives progress. And one woman I shot died of an overdose 3 weeks later. Another dad and a daughter who I shot got housing 3 days later. So these lives evolve, and I thought, boy, it would be really nice to continue to do that.
Right.
And
Right. It's like, you see the documentary and you learn all this stuff, and then you never really knows what happens. So
Yeah.
you basically want to follow this and kind of keep.
Yeah. And I'd already been
Here's
in
going.
3 times. So, you know, the sort of like routine and pattern was happening. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that's not going to be possible. I'm not going
Right.
to be able to go down there
Wow.
and do that now. You know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
So,
it's going to change our society for sure. And like, for example, I have stuff that I was supposed to schedule to shoot a motorcycle, which is in Switzerland, and the border is closed. I can't go over there. So
wow.
it's these little things that kind of stop you from doing it. You know. So
Yeah. I've been in touch with this one automotive client that I have, and we're talking about the idea now. So, you know, we haven't put it into play, but we've talked about like the methodology. And I think that what we're going to do is like, they'll kind of detail and prep the car, and they'll leave it in the warehouse for a few days. Then I'll come into the warehouse and I'll shoot all the interiors just by myself. And then, and then we'll wait like another couple days, and then we'll meet on the various outdoor locations, and just never, you know, I'll never get inside the car. I'll never even really get near the, you know, more than just, you know, 6, 10, 15 feet from the car. And me and whomever is, you know, moving the car and driving the car will never interact. So I think that kind of dance could be possible, you know, for that kind of thing. But for people, I don't know.
I don't know. My girlfriend just did a shoot, and she shot the whole thing. It was a mother and their child with the 56 Fuji. So that's kind of like 2 meters away.
Right.
More or less 2.5 meters. So kind of social distancing.
That's a great setup, that 56.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite Fuji lenses.
Yeah, it's a beautiful lens.
And the 16 as well. I think those two.
It's been so much fun, dude. It's like you're just like one of the gang.
Pleasure. I could do this literally anytime you want.
Awesome.
This is my favorite topic, and you guys are awesome.
Likewise.
Fun to talk to.
Well, it's so nice to connect with you.
Yeah. So guys, thank you guys for watching and listening. So if any of you guys have watched and listened this far, thank you. Good on you. We really appreciate that. Josh, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, getting to know you. And it's so nice, you know, because you look at somebody's work and, you know, you don't know what's behind it, but look at this dude. I mean, he's one of the dudes. So Mark, of course, so, you know, so great to have you here with us. And thank you for introducing us to Josh, because otherwise, you know, this couldn't have been possible. So there you go, guys. That's it for now. Oh, you know what? Before I go, let's say make sure to follow Josh on Instagram, Josh S. Rose.
That's right.
This podcast, you know, obviously is, you know, everywhere the podcasts are found. Definitely subscribe to my YouTube and subscribe to all of our Instagram feeds. Thanks again, Josh, and we'll see you soon.